Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very, 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 very special episode of the Two Fish at the Table podcast. As you can see, Ben and I are in an entirely new location. That's right. We moved all the way out to Vegas. We finally pulled the trigger on it. We bought a $5 million townhouse because Ben and I are going to quit our jobs to play poker professionally for a living, all to commemorate our special 100th episode. I am your host, East Coast Sam.
And I am your not full of crap host, Legend of Ben One of Poker Stars. It's only episode 99, bro. Come on.
But we quit our jobs to play poker.
I didn't quit my job. I don't know about you. I didn't quit my job.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to. Um... Anyway, well, welcome to this episode. It's actually our 99th episode, and we have a lot to talk about. This is kind of our middle of the WSOP update episode. Obviously, the main event is underway, as everyone knows. We'll be talking about what's been going on so far.
Yeah, we kind of took a bit of a podcast pause because we had some life changes going on. We're in a new residence, and that's fun. And this really allowed me to sort of take a step back, relax, and sort of absorb the preliminary events of the 2025 World Series of Poker in Las Vegas. And it was funny because I kind of went through a gradual evolution of how much I was engaging with this year's
Mhm.
roster of events because I recall those like first maybe like that first week or so, I was really kind of checked out. I mean, I didn't feel like any of the events had any big headlines. Nobody I cared about was making any deep runs. And then slowly and surely, I felt like the old guard of players that I knew about sort of started kicking things up and making some deep runs. I remember event number 9 was kind of the start of me sort of getting more involved here because that was the 10K Omaha high-low or 8 or better event with Daniel Negreanu actually making the final table and knocking out multiple players, playing very well before ultimately finishing in second. And Negreanu's had a very successful World Series so far. I've lost track of how many final tables. I want to say 5 or 6 final tables, and he's had quite a few deep runs besides those final tables. And guys like Helmuth and Mattisau have made some, final two, final three table runs, and that sort of got me engaged in their success this year. And there was also one more event that I thought was kind of funny early on. It was event number 13, where a couple players from the Hustler live stream final tabled. Guys like Trick Time and Brown Bala both made the final five, and then the second to last lady standing from the main event last year, Shuden Zhao, got third in that event. So that again it was just kind of cool to have a few players I at least knew all making very deep runs at the same final table.
Yeah, I'm more or less with you. I mean, these first few events didn't grab my attention too much, but there, definitely has been a lot of interesting poker since then. I mean, the Player of the Year race is very, very competitive right now with, really three people competing: Sean D, Martin Kabrhel, and Benny Glazer. I mean, the fact that Benny Glazer wins three bracelets and he's only third in the rankings is pretty astonishing. Both Cabral and Deeb have had pretty good Player of the Year results as well, but they're all pretty close. So I mean, I think it's anyone's game at this point. These last events are really going to matter. Yeah, I mean, 100 different bracelet events at the WSOP this year. I mean, all sorts of just strange events. You have the Mystery Millions, you have, Dealer's Choice events, you have Mystery Bounties, you have mix this and mix that and the other thing. So, it's left a lot of different events, and understandably, some are going to be more interesting than others. But still, quite a few have caught our attention as of late.
Yeah, and also just going down the list, one of the sort of background stories of this entire World Series was this sort of GG Poker promotion, where if you won a specific event online, and then you sort of won this like sort of virtual ticket, and then if you won a bracelet event in Las Vegas this year, you got a bonus prize of $1 million. And so I don't know too much about how many players these tournaments had online, or what the buy-in was, or were they a free roll? I'm not quite sure exactly how that sort of things was, but it has played a role in multiple final tables. The first one was event number 29, actually, where this player named Mark, I'm sorry, not Mark, it was a guy named last name Lavin, and he had one of these tickets, and he put on a clinic. He was basically, I think he was like second in chips when the foul table began, and then just knocked out each player one by one in one of the most dominating foul table performances I've ever seen personally. I put up there of things like Joe McKeon and even Jamie Gold as far as just how much he just ran the table. Now he got cards, but he also outplayed his opponents. They were all playing the fold ICM. I want to ladder up, game at times, and really. He won an additional $1 million on top of that, substantial prize. And so, props to him for putting together a very impressive performance. I think he won the actual bracelet was only $207,000 for first. And so adding a million on top of that, you can imagine that's just a pretty crazy thing. It was the 1500 no limit hold'em shootout tournament, which I actually used to play those back in the my old party poker days. Those were really fun where you'd play, a 10 or 9 person table, play down to a winner, and then that person would move on to another, next table of champions against all the other winners. And that's a fun format. I wouldn't, honestly, if there was one format that I wouldn't mind trying out in Las Vegas, it would be probably something like that.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you talk about the players who really put on clinics. I mean, Jesse Yaganuma's heads up game, I mean, clearly it's almost like he knew what James Carroll had. I mean, he really did such a great job during that heads up match.
Well, yeah, we'll get to it here because probably, of the biggest stories this year, this is probably the biggest one that had some non-poker world engagement in the news scene and the reporting scene. So, from the top here, so the Millionaire Maker, the infamous Millionaire Maker event, was also had a player at the final table who had one of these, $1 million tickets that if they win the bracelet, they win the $1 million. And so, it wasn't a final table full of players I was very familiar with. I knew who James Carroll was from a couple of main events, maybe, back in the olden days. I think maybe like 2010. He played against, I think, Helmuth or Negreanu or something like that. And
Hmm.
so, the Millionaire Maker is a funny event because even though the name says Millionaire Maker, the top two make $1 million given the field size. So really, 2 millionaires are made. And one of these golden ticket or whatever you want to call it winners made his way to heads up at a severe disadvantage. And so I actually watched this on the Pogo stream live. Just coincidentally, I managed to have the time and the scheduling to watch this, and just me sitting there watching, I was very impressed that he made this huge comeback. I believe at one point he had like 12 big blinds up
Hmm.
against maybe 112 big blinds. So, maybe not quite 10 to 1, but like maybe like 9.5 to 1, 9 to 1 chip disadvantage. And I was just so impressed that he was raising all the right times, not afraid to gamble, not afraid to put that extra raise in when Carroll was trying to play back. And so I was really impressed just watching there, not knowing anything else behind the context of anything. And then before I knew it, there you go. James Carroll has blown it, and he's lost this tournament. And I'm like, props. This is one of the better comebacks I'd personally seen in a heads up situation at the World Series. And so Jesse, I was like, congratulations. So the top prize was $1.25 million for first and about 1 million for second. So even James Carroll couldn't be too unhappy with the outcome there. And then the news headlines start.
Yeah, I mean, just getting right into it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they made a backroom deal that the James Carroll, raises an odd amount, $33 million. Jesse Naganuma knows that James Carroll doesn't have it and can raise over him. James Carroll raises 32 million, then Jesse folds. It's, that pattern, I mean, was held pretty much throughout the entire heads up match. I think there were a couple spots where Jesse folded, but he had like 8-4 offsuit when James had Jack 8. So, I mean, it made sense for him to fold. I mean, the commentators were talking about it all throughout that it seemed like Jesse knew what James's whole cards were. Even at one point started talking about professional wrestling and how those storylines tend to be scripted, which I think was a sort of wink wink to the audience that they knew that something was up. I think it's pretty clear that they made a deal in the back room. And a lot of poker players, Doug Polk's made a video about this. I think Scott Seaver has tweeted about this, basically saying like, "Oh, nothing wrong happened. If it's between the two of them, then it's okay. It's basically, a deal for money." And I thought that that was totally okay, and I agreed with that until Daniel Negreanu mentioned in a video that apparently they tried to make a deal with the person in third place, Josh Raincard. Josh refused. So that's when I feel like, okay, there should have been some punishment and consequences if that's the case, because obviously James and Jesse have a understanding that if they knock Josh out, then they can have this deal with the extra $1 million and make money for both of them. So obviously, as I think everybody knows, the WSOP ruled that no bracelet will be rewarded, no winner is rewarded. James and Jesse are splitting the remaining prize pool. So they each get about $1.1 million. And then presumably the extra million is being rewarded, probably split 50-50. We don't know for sure. So they're probably getting about 1.6 million. But apparently, as well, they've also both been banned from Caesars casinos, which means that they're both banned from the WSOP. So these two guys are, I guess, banned for life. No one's quite sure what it is at this point, what exactly the terms are. This is just stuff that's been said on Twitter, which is kind of, it's kind of a surprise, honestly. I mean, Jesse Yaganuma had won 3 bracelets previously, albeit on online tournaments. James Carroll had been around for a while. So, I mean, just to see these two players kind of make this deal, which I think a lot of people would have taken and gotten punished, is quite something. It's when that third player becomes involved that I think the consequences are a little bit more warranted there.
I agree. It was kind of funny because I just mentioned how I don't always watch the Poker Go streams with commentary on. I might have it muted while I'm doing something else. And so
Hmm.
I think I recall I didn't have the commentary on it during the entirety. And also I was watching it a little bit on catch up replay at 2x speed. So I was completely none the wiser that there was anything funny going on, just passively like, 3/4 focus eye test watching. So again, it kind of reminded me of watching Mike Postle online where until I had the full context of certain things, I was maybe naive to the true intentions of what was going on the felt there. And it was kind of funny how the investigation kind of progressed because at first, oh, he wins, hallelujah, and then all of a sudden we get told they're investigating, so the money's not being given, and then the GG Poker said that they were going to give the $1 million no matter what the investigation was, and then Wizards of Poker said, okay, they get the money, but there's no bracelet for Waganuma. And it was just kind of funny to see that progress in real time because we don't usually see things like that happen. Usually, if a player gets disqualified, it just kind of happens fast, and then people can complain about it online afterwards. So it definitely made for some interesting storytelling right there. And I agree with what you said. When you involve a third player, it does change things. And I mean, it does also speak to the nature of how foolish this promotion was in the first place. Like, it'd be one thing if it was like if you win a bracelet, then you play, try to win the million or something like that, or maybe you don't know and you get like a ticket that's like a large ticket, and you learn afterwards, oh, this was a winner after I won a bracelet, or something that so that you wouldn't know before playing the tournament, because otherwise, obviously, you have chances for corruption like this, and unless somebody kind of kept it to themselves, which would be restricting someone's right to speech. There's really, I don't think there was really much of a way for this promotion to really work when it was that big a figure.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to do this promotion next year in light of this. As you mentioned, yeah, I mean, it's very silly if you have like all of the bracelet winners draw lots or something, and 5 random winners get the extra million. I'd be okay with something like that, but knowing in advance that these players are going to have these lottery tickets, also in the earlier stages of the tournament, it's going to affect your play even back then. Maybe you'll be a bit more encouraged to get this player out because you're jealous that they're going to win an extra million. Uh, if they win the tournament. So I doubt that they're going to do this next year. I don't think it's a good idea. Obviously, they get free publicity from this. I guess there's no such thing as bad publicity here. But hopefully the WSOP and, other companies that make such deals can work out a deal to prevent this stuff in the future because really should never happen again. I mean, people talk about the spirit of the game and making the game better for amateurs, right? I mean, this is the one thing that I would say if there wasn't a third party involved and it was just the two of them, right? I mean, you're trying to promote the game for amateurs and try to encourage more people to be involved in poker, right? Is John Smith from, Lorena, Ohio going to be more likely to play a poker tournament knowing that the players are making a deal to chip dump to the other guy? I mean, I don't think so. I understand the deals are done behind scenes all the time. But I mean, it's a lot different. It's one thing to say, we're going to split the money 50-50 and play for the bracelet. That would be okay. Or, if whoever wins gets actually 60% of the money and you have to send a check to the second place finisher. That's again okay because you are playing for first place still. It's another thing to say, I'm going to give you first place. That's the distinction there that I don't like. So hopefully this never happens again.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird because had this been like a smaller tournament, like this tournament had almost 12,000 players, and so you have obviously a big prize pool. But imagine that this was like, like a $50,000 first prize and like a 40,000 second prize. It would be it's pretty insane to imagine these players could have been banned. I mean, at least with winning the 1.6 million each, you can kind of like coast off of that. Like, if you were these guys are professional poker players, but if it was a smaller amount, I'd feel a little bit bad about them being banned forever because I think that they did what just was logically it checks off the logic box in my head. I mean, obviously, it's a little suspect and everything, but at least I can understand why they did it. Whereas with this big score here, I'm sure they can find a way to survive this banning, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, they can just play online, right? As I mentioned, Jesse had gotten 3 online bracelets previously, so he's clearly a very talented online player. So I'm sure they can just, it's $1.1 million or invest in a company. You can do a lot with that kind of money. So I mean, they're going to be okay in the long run, I guess. They still got their money, right? It wasn't like, oh, you're not getting any money at all and you're being kicked out of the tournament and, Josh Rencard gets into first place instead. So, I think this is the right thing. There's no absolute proof that this deal happened. It's pretty clear to me based off of the action at the table that it happened. And again, whoever told Daniel Negreanu that this deal apparently tried to be made with Josh Rencard in third place. So I think this is, all things considered, fair.
I agree. Other stories that happened here, like how about the Colossus at number 19? Mac Lance, considered one of the best players in everyone breaks it, finished in third. So again, coming very close to finally breaking that curse. That's one of those things where I always kind of root for the professional to finally break into because again having recently broke my MSO medal droughts, I feel like I want to pass on the same luck and fortune to somebody else. That was, another close call. And again, Matt Glancy played very well to get that far. We're talking 16,000 players. And that was a trend this year, is that they're seeing the biggest numbers of these tournaments of all time. I think the Gladiator had something like 20, was it like 20 something thousand, 30,000 players or something crazy in there? I think that's, pretty incredible. Oh, here we go, 24,629 players. I think one of the biggest tournaments of all time. That's pretty cool for a $300 tournament that spans a week. Other stories that I thought Jason Kuhn winning another bracelet, very impressive. Again, I met him in Vegas 4 years ago with Adam, and that was really cool. And again, I always root for anybody I've met in Vegas, so again, always cool to have that. You mentioned Benny Glitch's 3 bracelet wins, which puts him up to I think 8 bracelets in his career, which puts him kind of in that second tier of I kind of have Helmuth up here, and then you have like Johnny Chan, the deceased Earl Brunson. Ivy with 10, and then you have kind of in the same kind of sphere 8. And I feel like Bunny Glazer, we could very easily see him get to 10, by next year. I think it's very possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 8 right now. It's the most of any player from Europe. So he's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame too. And he's not even 40 years old yet. So yeah, he's definitely got plenty of time to catch 10 bracelets at a minimum and go beyond that, maybe even chase Helmuth.
hmm And then another pretty enjoyable event this year was watching the Poker Players Championship, considered the second biggest event of the year behind the main event, with some very impressive play here. Mike Madison running very far, making to the final. I think it was like the final 2 tables,
Hmm.
and then a very entertaining final table that had the final 3 being Esther Taylor, the only lady in the whole event, running and getting to third place, which was really impressive. She played extremely well. Bryn Kenny, one of the highest grossing tournament players of all time. And then Mr. Michael Mizrachi, the grinder, his 4th championship. Jared Blessing was in the booth during this broadcast, and he called it the greatest achievement in tournament poker history. I can't disagree with that, really. That's just really impressive to put off 4 wins in an event that's only been around for less than 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk this year about who is going to go into the Poker Hall of Fame. I think that punches Miss Rocky's ticket, if, probably this year, if not next year. I mean, very impressive stuff to win it 4 times, especially when you think about that Brian Rast has won it 3 times. So these 2 guys combined have won it how many times? It's only been since 2010. So it's pretty crazy. 7 years, 2 guys. I mean, half the wins basically have gone to just the two of them,
Since
which is
'06. Remember, it was the Chip Reese tournament in '06 that he won, and then
right. If you count, that event, if you count that, then that makes sense. But I mean, still, it's just crazy to think that, Miss Rocky has done it 4 times and Rast has done it 3 times. Boggles the mind to think, the mastery of all these games you have to have, how the game has changed over the last 15 years, and you're on top of all that. Very impressive.
and while we're on the topic of repeat champions, Sheena Okamoto winning the Lays event for the second straight year when she'd gotten second 2 years ago. So we're talking a second, first in this event in the last 3 years. Very impressive. She did bust main event yesterday, unfortunately, But either way, it's still a very impressive accomplishment, and the field that has grown to well over 1,000 players year to year. And so, props to her for defending her title, which is never easy to do because everyone's always got a target gunning for you. And I look forward to seeing her hopefully go for the three-peat. The Chiefs couldn't do it this year in the NFL. Maybe she can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other stuff going on here. We had Negreanu making fourth place in a newer event, the mixed big bet event, and I thought that he took a really bad spot where he shoved a combo draw on the turn. I think he's just too good a player personally to shove a spot like that and just leave it up to the deck. I think he should have checked and sort of seen his equity on the river, but he's the champion, not me. So we'll see about that. Other things that happened was the mini main events won by Mr. Martin Kabrhel, the villain of poker this year. His antics have definitely, I feel like, have maybe jumped a level as far as notoriety and sort of like, poker, not fame, but like, notoriety basically. And I ask you, Sam, we talked about Kasuf and how our thoughts on him kind of evolved. We originally hated him in 2016, and then we kind of learned to appreciate the entertainment value of it maybe in the years afterwards. I'm not quite there on Cabral right now though. I'm still pretty much against him right now.
So I think watching his day one where he called the floor guy over and like did this whole shtick to the camera just to plug his store, that is like one of the funniest things I've seen at the WSOP. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. I think it's pretty clear he's playing a character, that he's playing it up to the cameras, maybe to tilt his opponents, but also just to have fun. I like the table antics. I like all that. I like the banter. I agree with the commentators. The stalling can be a little much sometimes. Um, but given that every person tanks the WSOP, and especially in the main event, I don't really see it as a huge problem. I just appreciate if people played faster. So I like Cabral. I understand that he can be an acquired taste. But, as people have also brought up, I mean, we need to have more people talking and showing their personalities in the game. And if that means that somebody comes off as a bit annoying, I'd rather have somebody be a bit annoying and show their personality and be funny and play to the cameras than just nine people wearing hoodies, staying stone-faced. And also, I sort of think of it as the comic duo, right? Like the eight players around him who are just stone-faced, who don't like him, are sort of the straight man versus Martin Kabrhel as the foil. It gets funnier the more that you just see these people like try to play their game, staring down at the felt, and there's Kabrhel talking to them and doing all these antics. Um, but I can see how, he reminds you of Kasuf, given he repeated the words "not like that" in Casino Royale about 5,300 times during his day one, pretty much every interval he
54.
could. Yeah, I mean, pretty crazy. And also, I mean, weird moment toward the end of day one where it's the last hand before the break, and apparently he had been told that the table was going to be swapped out with another TV table, but apparently they decided not to, and he got genuinely angry. Like it wasn't in character. Like you could tell that he was genuinely frustrated. So again, you can tell that he's playing up to the cameras, this sort of goofy side, and he is quieter in other spots. So again, I understand why people might find him annoying. I wish he'd have, some other catchphrases to work in there and beside not like that. But hopefully we'll all go and buy merchandise at his store, not like that dot store. Please go and, tell him that I said that on Twitter so that we get a discount on t-shirts because I might buy one. And then, he'll stop the store and then he'll stop that catchphrase.
So I disagree with you in the sense that, I'd rather have eight people be happy at the table than one person happy at the table, just by sheer math there. So if he's bugging the table and he's stalling and being and doing his thing and is rubbing the table the wrong way, I'd rather have eight people be content at the table than just have one be happy at the table. I get the entertainment value of it. It is funny to watch sometimes, but when it comes to the point where he's tanking with 8-4 offsuit on the flop after it's been bet into and then he folds, then I take issue with that obviously. And he did noticeably shut up in one particular spot where someone else was facing a big bet, and so I appreciated that at least. But at the same time, he does have the results to back up his play. Like Kasuf is basically a higher stakes Kasuf at this point as far as success. And so, winning the mini main event, he's among the tops in the Player of the Year. It's going to be a pretty tight race between him and Sean Deeb and Benny Glaser. So we'll see what happens. I feel like if I was sitting at the table with him, I wouldn't mind it. I'd even try to like maybe play back at him verbally a little bit in between hands, just because try to like override his talk with my own talk or something like that, or I don't know, twist his words against him, just a little improvisation thing. But if I'll keep an open mind to maybe moving on from that sort of negativity towards him. But uh, but either way, I'll still be happy for him if he wins Player of the Year. But I think the poker world is probably not rooting for that.
Well, again, as I mentioned, a lot of people are tanking. There's been a lot of discussion of having shot clocks at the main event. There aren't any right now. But I mean, you can see all throughout that, on all sorts of other tables, people are tanking. So Cabral really isn't unique in that at all. I wish he wouldn't do it. I wish he wouldn't do it, of course, but everybody else does it, so I don't really see it as a huge big deal. And yeah, I mean, I can understand that again, his table talk might be a little annoying to people. If I was at the table, I'd just be laughing uncontrollably, honestly. Like, I think he's just the way he phrases things, the way he says things. Like, he'll like reach over and like, he won't touch people's chips, but he'll like take like lint or something off the felt in front of somebody. I think that's just kind of funny. I get it. Again, it's subjective. People can like what they like. Just like if you don't like them, you can express that. But we need a little bit more of this kind of stuff in the game. At least it's something for us to talk about versus, if it was Martin Smith instead, we wouldn't be having this conversation about the secondary table right now. So it gives something to think about.
Obviously, we were in the middle of the main event. All of the day ones concluded yesterday. And
Mhm.
to my surprise and to my enjoyment, they actually brought back the main stage for the main event during the
Yep.
day one streams. We mentioned how last year was a pretty lackluster, season for Poker Go because they would put the main event coverage on these like, isolated tables and in the darker room that they usually would put the other bracelet events on. And so by having it on the big stage, I just felt happier watching. And we had a couple of pretty good days of coverage, I would say. Day 1A was pretty good, and then we had a really enjoyable day two because my big three, Negreanu, Helmuth, and Mataso, all survived with above starting stacks on day 1B, with a little bit of both Helmuth and Negreanu at the TV table to add to the fun. And then, unfortunately, I thought that day 1C was kind of a big dud. Didn't really have players I cared about, and I thought the play was pretty lackluster. But luckily, day 1D did pick things back up to give me an overall pretty solid average of quality for the day one action. We had a pretty interesting case though, where we had Chris Angel actually deliver the bracelet to the room, and they actually joked later, "Oh, the bracelet's still missing. Where to go? Did Chris Angel take it?" And I was actually really praying that Chris Angel would play in the tournament because he can afford 10,000 bucks first of all, and second of all, it'd be kind of fun to see another celebrity in the field. But at least it was kind of a music introduction with him.
Yeah, I remember Mind Freak way back in the day and watching that show. So it was kind of weird to see Chris Angel just sort of walk up out of nowhere and give the bracelet. Yeah, beside Cabral, I haven't seen too much of the other days. I'm sorry, everyone. I've been very busy. Just sort of looking at the chip stacks right now. Obviously, a lot of players that we know are still in. Unfortunately, Chris Moneymaker was not one of them, hitting a one outer when he had a full house on day one. I mean, after, the last few years, he's been pretty good at, cashing in the main event. So it's a shame that he wasn't able to get there. Also, Phil Ivey also busted on day one. So we're not going to be seeing those two in the field. But Phil Hellmuth is still in. Cliff Joseph's still in. A lot of people are still in. Kabrhel is well over the starting stack at 168,700. So we'll be seeing more of his antics, I'm sure, as thing goes on. Yeah, I mean, we have a good mix of players. There's nobody who I really think has, stood out in terms of people that I don't know yet. It's obviously very early in the tournament, so hopefully as time goes on, there'll be some dark horses that'll really grab my attention.
Yeah, and other players doing well this year. Sean Deeb, we mentioned he's first in Player of the Year. He won a number seven bracelet a couple days ago, and then he's at the final table today, going for another one. He's the chip leader with three players left, and I think it's like the 1K No Limit Hold'em tournament. And also happening concurrently during the main event is another final table with Kerry Katz in the final four of the $2,500 No Limit Hold'em events, and so those were kind of running last night late with the main event one day 1D, and so I was kind of following all three. And again, I like that they have other events happening at the same time as the main event, even though it's kind of strange that they're all a little bit hold'em, but whatever anyway. And obviously there's still about a quarter of the events, maybe a fifth of the events left to go before the end of the season, and so even guys like Ivy, Moneymaker can still hop in an event and make a deep run here. So should be very exciting to see how this Player of the Year race, continues. I mean, I would imagine that if Benny Glaser can get a fourth bracelet or maybe run deep in the main event, then maybe, he takes our Player of the Year. It just kind of feels strange that someone that wins three bracelets wouldn't win Player of the Year, though.
Yeah, I mean his events were smaller events. Um, So I guess that's sort of the logic behind it is it's better to win one big event in the Player of the Year race than three smaller ones. But still, it's so hard to win a poker tournament. I feel like they should be weighing it a little bit more first place finish. But again, I mean, Glazier is only 50 points behind Deeb right now, and Cabral is only 15 points behind Deeb. I mean, if Deeb wins his second brace, he's going to be very hard to beat, of course. But who knows? I mean, anything can happen. As you mentioned, there are still a number of events left, a number of online events as well. So it's not just live events, but online ones, most of which are no limit hold'em. There's some PLO events in there. So we'll see what happens. And who knows, maybe, somebody else will win two or three bracelets in these last events and shoot up the rankings. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And again, t today is day 2A, B, C of the main event, and so a lot of all the main characters from those first 3 days will be in the room at the same time, and then obviously day three is when the whole field combines into one, and so that's when the tournament kind of gets real. The money bubble kind of looms a little bit in the corner, and so I can't wait to watch that. And again, even though there are players that I care about that I don't even know if I don't even think Greg Raymer has entered yet, like for example, and so maybe the late reg, and remember they do late reg maybe like a quarter into day two. So they haven't quite reached like, oh, it's the biggest main event of all time. But I do think that they'll get pretty close or probably eclipse last year.
Yeah, I think that I saw an article on Poker News saying that they were a bit behind pace in terms of eclipsing last year, but that they felt, confident that they would at least hit like I think 9,000 or so, if not close to 10,000. So we'll see. Might not quite be the biggest main event of all time, but still very sizable. I imagine first place will still get $10 million or something like that. And speaking of $10 million winners, Jonathan Tamayo is still in the tournament, so he's could repeat. Jordan Griff busted, however, so Tamayo got I think over 100K. I'm seeing here, so could be an interesting one to see him repeat.
Yeah, unfortunately, guys like Adam Grosek and Michael Nowitzki are not playing the main event really anymore, which is fine. It's their right. But again, obviously they're at the top of my list of who to root for if they were playing. And I asked Sam this question a couple days ago, and I wanted to bring it up again. Is that imagine Sam, you had $10,000 to enter into a tournament. I asked you before, maybe your answer is the same with a change. Would you rather enter the main event once or enter the mini main 10 times?
Main event once, just for the experience of playing the main event. I understand, yeah, if I play the mini main 10 times, maybe I'm more likely to cash and make some money overall. But the experience of playing the main event, especially if I cash in the main event, I would feel like that's a bigger accomplishment than cashing in the mini main.
I feel like with you, I imagine your style would be to play level one, hand one. I probably did the same thing, honestly. I want to get my full value here and not just late reg day two and have, fewer big blinds. But I know that and you're a very tight player. So do you feel like you would still be as tight in those early levels, or would you mix things up and then maybe tighten up as the day goes on?
Tight is right, my friend.
Yeah, because there were some pretty solid hands sprinkled throughout day one. Nothing that I'm like, oh, off the top of my head, I can remember. Maybe there was a hand that was aces against kings against queens yesterday that was pretty impressive, where the kings and queens got away from it without going
Mhm.
broke. And I imagine I'd probably pretty much be in the same boat, where if I don't have aces, I'm not going to go crazy.
Yeah.
But as far as taking our look off of Vegas and looking elsewhere in the world, two big stories happening in the real world. Real world. Michael Madsen unfortunately passed away at the age of 67. We discussed him in a couple different fictional poker media, one being the ESPN show Tilt, the other one being the small movie All In with Dominic Swain. And I felt that with Tilt, he was probably, outside of Hellmuth and David Williams, like as far as the main cast, probably one of the least, worst parts of the show for the most part. I mean, he wasn't amazing, but at least his character, the Matador, was the Matador, and it made a bit more sense maybe than the main trio, for example.
I mean, for the most part, he does because he doesn't have a whole lot to work with, right? You just kind of have to look tough, and he
Yeah.
has that sort of tough guy, big, broad man charisma to kind of shoulder his way through things.
Yeah.
The more emotional moments, I think I won't say that he did like a terrible, absolutely abysmal job. Chris Bauer did, he didn't. Um, but he wasn't very convincing to me in those moments. This was clearly a paycheck for him. Again, Tilt is so bad it's good beyond compare. It's the worst television show I've ever seen, but it's also the most hilarious television show I've ever seen. And then in All In, I mean, he's Dominic Swain's obviously the lead of the movie. He plays a very small role in the movie overall. He's in those flashbacks in the film for some reason, and then he has that weird like faked his death in a car, and the car looks like it's in a black box theater, and then he comes back and he's in the poker tournament. He has like a dyed hair, and even Dominic and him both go into the final stage of the tournament, even though they didn't play off against each other. And then he folds like that movie's just crazy. But I didn't think he did a good job in that movie either. But he is an iconic figure in poker media. We can say that one of the most iconic figures in poker media, and obviously he was great in Reservoir Dogs and all of Tarantino's films. So it's sad to hear that he passed away for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate our viewers that did watch those two episodes reviewing our breakdown of Tilts. Those got a bit more coverage once he passed away, which for better or for worse. And again, Madsen, he had a lengthy list of not accomplishments of roles. Kind of reminds me of like Ron Perlman, where he's not like an A star, B star, but he's kind of like in that. But he gets work so regularly that most people would have known him from some role and from the last 40 years.
Right.
Beyond that, maybe the biggest thing to happen in poker since Black Friday is the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill, which has more legislature than I have time to discuss. But the biggest thing for the poker scene was a change in the calculations of tax deductions for losses at playing poker. So guys like Doug Polk and Negranu have discussed this online, and we'll just throw our 2 cents in here, given that we're not very political when it comes to poker, law and whatnot. But the main thing is that players can only deduct 90% of their losses, not 100% of their losses, when calculating their income, annually. And so imagine a player made $1 million prize of they won one tournament and they won $1 million, and then they lost. They paid $1 million in buy-ins during that year. Beforehand, that'd be a net income of zero, so they'd pay no taxes on zero. But now, because they can only do 90%, they can only deduct 90 or $900,000 of the 1 million. So they would be taxed as if they made $100,000 when they in fact broke even. And so you could imagine if you make no money playing poker and you're being taxed as if you made $100,000, that's gonna, be a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're trying to be a politics-free podcast, not a poker-free podcast, excuse me. So we won't, talk too much about the politicking behind it or all that. Yeah, I can understand why a lot of professional poker players are going to be unhappy about this. Apparently, the provision also applies to sports bettors as well, so that's going to affect them. This was sort of in the back part of the bill, kind of snuck in there, under the cover of night. It wasn't really reported on until really a couple of days ago when the bill got passed. So I'm not really sure what the thinking is behind it, who exactly proposed it, but it is, now law. So, obviously this is going to affect the poker industry. Do I think people are going to quit playing poker? I doubt it, but it's going to be interesting to see moving forward how it affects people handling bankroll management and how it affects the thinking in terms of trying to go for the win. If you go for the win, you get to make all this money, but if you pay these big buy-ins on the other hand, then you can only deduct 90% now. So maybe you're going to be less encouraged to do those big buy-ins and do smaller tournaments. We might be seeing some of that. We're obviously not sure. This is all speculative. But obviously, I wish all the poker players well in handling this. Obviously, talk to a financial advisor, talk to an accountant, get your circumstances in order, and hopefully you can get through this.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of think about like how this would affect each kind of poker player. Like if you're like a total amateur, you have a full-time job, and every month you play one tournament, you're probably going to be okay. Doesn't really change much. I mean, average Joe wins a big tournament. Let's say, a Moneymaker 2.0 enters a $300 tournament, wins a main event seat, wins the main event. That guy is not really impacted by this bill. So that's good. But then you have like the professional player that plays maybe the lower stakes, and their edges are so small. where, they might play, 20 tournaments a year and, they're eking out a couple $1,000 profit every month. But then, this bill eats almost could wipe out all their profits. So that's, kind of my thought process there. And then you have the businessmen, the Kerry Cats, the guys that money doesn't matter, not going to affect them. Okay, but then you have the guys well, like the Matasaus and the Negreanus. They play the super high stake tournaments, and even Negreanu loses money. You know, I would say a lot of the time. Like I remember on his blogs, he'll post at the end his win loss amount for the summer. And last year, he's been up and down. It's a coin flip every year if he's up or down. This year he's up, but you imagine if all with the change in the taxes, he could be down because he's playing, the $250,000 buy-ins, the 100K buy-ins, and that is more substantial. The higher stakes you play in the buy-ins, that 10% that you're now not deducting is more substantial. And so Negreanu, now he's got money from his sponsorships, so he's not really an issue. But I'm talking about other players that don't have that kind of support and regularity to their income. That I think them are the ones that are going to be very impacted. And I could imagine this could make play on the bubble for these big tournaments even more tense than they already are.
Yeah, I mean, I think recreational players aren't going to have a problem. Somebody who, just wants to play the main event on an off, just because they're not going to have an issue. And obviously the very top players who, consistently post good earnings and have sponsorships, they're not going to be a problem. It's the people who are kind of in those middle ranks that I can see this bill really affecting. And as you mentioned, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see bubble play. Interestingly, the American Gaming Association, which is the union that kind of supports casinos and casino dealers and all that, they're actually in favor of the big beautiful bill. They've actually supported as policymaking, saying that on the whole, even if you factor this in, this is good for gamblers, which some players have chewed them out over. But it is kind of interesting to see that this organization that's supporting casinos, not necessarily casino employees, but casinos themselves, uh, is supporting this legislation. So again, this is going to have multiple effects on players, as is any 1,000-page bill that Congress passes. There's a lot of different provisions that need to be hashed out, and we're just going to have to see how things go as time goes on.
Yeah, you imagine. I mean, I don't have a ton of faith. Let's say this, affects poker next year. We see a one third drop in on all the field sizes. I don't really see like government really being motivated to reverse it. Like it's not like
Right.
this is like a tax thing for like the lower class of the country. This is like a different. Is it like gambling is not a necessity to basic life. Food,
Right.
shelter, water. Safety. It's not really. So it makes you wonder, is there any sort of, undo button? I don't think there really would be in this case.
No, the only undo button would be to just, repeal the provision. That's it.
Right. And I don't know if that would instantly have the proper support to do so from either side of the government. So who knows? I heard a rumor on Twitter, this is a different story here, that this of the current contract, this year is the last year for Poker Go covering the World Series of Poker. So there's a
Really.
chance that a brand like GG Poker might take over the streaming of it. And it's kind of unfortunate if it is because for one thing, this year's coverage has been, I think, an upgrade from last year's glitchy, poor decision making from last year. Like I felt that they kind of learned their lesson from last year. So I would hate for them to be gone. And also, it's kind of the main reason why we even subscribed to PokerGo in the first place. So we'd probably have to end our subscription if that happened for next year.
Yeah, if GG Poker can do a better job than Poker Go, I'm happy to let them have a crack at it. Yeah, as you mentioned, I think the coverage has been getting better as time's gone on. Nothing super elaborate or anything, but the graphics are fine. Maybe the audio mixing's a bit off in some tournaments. I noticed that in some tournaments the commentators are turned down a little bit too much. The players at the table are turned up a bit too much. And maybe there could just be a bit better among the commentators of letting the more talkative players talk and not talking over them as these players are talking. That would be nice. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people on Reddit don't like PokerGo. A lot of people on YouTube don't like PokerGo. Maybe it's just because they don't want to play for poker coverage or pay for poker coverage, excuse me. But also because, they have been making a couple strange choices in terms of their schedule, namely not showing Martin Kabrhel's final table at the mini main event, which I think was a missed opportunity. They should have shown that. But I understand there's only so much you can do. Streaming does cost a lot of money. I mean, it costs money to run those lights, run those cameras, make sure the audio is okay, make sure the video is okay, have two commentators in the booth. So you can only have so much at one time. But it would be nice to have coverage of each and every single final table, even the ones that aren't. Don't have players like Martin Kabrhel, just because it's nice to see them. So maybe GG Poker can do a job of that. Maybe they can split it with GG Poker. You take a few of these events, Poker Go will focus on most of those. That might be an interesting thing to do.
Or again, even just have a commentary free feed of a table with
Mhm.
card graphics, and have someone in the booth for a different one. ESPN 1, ESPN 2, ESPN 3, they had three channels because they could show, different matches from Wimbledon at the same time.
Right.
Same idea here. I think that's very doable, but obviously they don't think so because otherwise they'd probably do it.
Right.
And so again, really, right now it's just about time for I think day two in Vegas to begin, and so I am looking very forward to watching the action on Poker for now at least. They have been splitting a little bit of YouTube and Poker coverage on the Poker channel, so there is a way for non-subscribers to watch a little bit as they do every year, but I think it's worth mentioning still. And it's still too early to really have like a favorite to win or hopes on anyone running deep, but I would say I'll keep an eye out for my usual suspects and maybe my like sort of second tier of who I root for. And once we hit that day three, then I'll definitely kind of lock into who I'm rooting for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my sort of gun to the head answer right now about who to look for would be Michael Mizrachi, that he's in the top 10 stacks right now. He's at just shy of 300,000 and with over 300 big blinds. So I definitely say he's, got a chance of running deep. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's just too early. A lot of players that we've known in the past, final tablists, as well as bracelet winners, have big stacks. So it just remains to be seen how exactly things play out.
It's true. And Sam, we are so close now to our 100th episode, officially up to 100. We've had, point 0.5 missed in there, but as far as nomenclature, we're this close to up to 100, so we have so many ideas for what we could do. No announcements right now as far as special guests, but we'll hope to get as special a episode as possible for you guys very soon as the summer progresses.
Yep, and if you'd like to share your thoughts in the WSOP below, should Jesse Naganuma have gotten his bracelet? What would you have done if you have taken that deal? Do you like Kabrhel? Anything that we've talked about, feel free to leave a comment as well as any suggestions for content you want us to cover or even recover. We're happy to go over with a guest a previous movie if you want to be on the podcast and talk about your thoughts on All In or Tilt and talk about Michael Madsen. Feel free. We're happy to have you on.
Yeah, and again, guys, things that you can look forward to in later installments of our podcast. We might be doing some re-reviews of old content we've discussed before. There's more poker documentaries that we can watch. There's more poker scenes in TV that we could watch. There's more poker books for us to read. There's more poker horror films for us to watch. And also the Big Game on Tour season two recently came back, so we'll probably be reviewing that in the future too. So again, a lot of cool content for us to discuss, and we're looking forward to it. But until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Not like that.
Not like that? Okay, well, see you next time, guys.
Bye.